We are now about to start the last session of the day. The fucking Respighi brothers got me in this goddamn thing.
Well,
and I can't get out.
Well, coming to... All right.
I think it's probably the best $5 grand we ever
tell a story.
spent.
Shut up. This summer, just before 9/11, through a series of contacts, I got invited through an admiral to go fly onto an aircraft carrier that was doing war games in the Atlantic, the Theodore Roosevelt. And I thought it would be really a nice experience. And I would never do that again either. It was hot, claustrophobic, noisy, scary. I had to land on the thing and then get shot off the next day in a catapult. Halfway into this, I got claustrophobia and I couldn't move. And now I'm sweating. And I don't want to miss any of the program. It's probably going to take me a few hours to change my pants when I get out.
What a nice thought that is.
Yeah. That's a pretty picture.
Let's get this over with, guys.
Well, come on out here.
Come on out. All right.
Come on out.
Let's hear it for Richard Saul Warman. Coming out.
This is the...
All right. Well,
I happen to like sumo wrestling a lot.
When we came to TED, we had 3 goals. One was to do our presentation and hopefully entertain you during that.
Second was to create a brand new musical instrument.
And third, to beat Richard with bats. So to that end, we've created Richard Saul Warman in the sumo phone.
It's not quite a 17th century cello.
There you go.
But, okay, here's how it works. We're going to start and just do a quick, just show you how it works.
Little scale. Oops, you have to restart the...
Yeah, let me see if it's
all, right.
all turned on. It's
comfortable? Oh, wait, well, something's missing. All right. There you go. All right. How's that look? There. That's nice. That's a good look for you. All right. So we're going to start with a simple scale. As you can see, there are 8 pads on the front. Each one represents 1 note on the octave.
And then on the back, we have 4. Those are the...
These are the accidentals, which is all you musicians know. These are the notes musicians hit by mistake.
Okay.
Ready. Let's see if we...
bass notes.
Okay. Okay, that's how it works.
All right, that's the sumo phone. Now we'll start with a simple American folk tune.
American folk tune, just to...
This is going to be very quick, guys.
Yeah, we're good.
What time does this session end?
It's almost over.
Ooh, you're scaring me.
Really? Woo! You big scary sumo, you! What are you gonna do? Fall on us?
Joe, I need you.
Oh, you had backup. This is good. Here we go.
All right. Ready.
Nice. That's Richard.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
Now.
What's that? Keep going?
No, now. Out.
Really? There's one more song.
Just, this will be a nice song for you.
Okay.
No.
You okay?
This is a tribute song.
All right. Okay. Now give us some help on this next song because it's a tribute. You'll catch on. Here we go. Ready. One last one.
One more?
No, no. Oh, no,
One last one. This is the end. This is the end.
This is it.
This is it. One. No.
Gloria?
Well, I just want to say that after I'm over, Rupert Murdoch is going to come in this. And Rupert, are you here? Okay, would you like to do this?
Now, folks, we have one final song. I'm sure you'll recognize it.
Yeah.
This is our tribute to our great country.
Yep.
Tribute to America.
Absolutely. Perry.
You've heard this song sung by firemen, sung because of the events that happened.
Yep.
This, of course, is God Bless America.
First
And-
time it's ever been played on the Sumophone.
And we'll play God Bless America. And folks, at the end of this song, if we don't get a standing ovation, that means the terrorists have won.
Yes. Oh, wait.
Oh, right, this is a double
This is a
batter.
fast
This is a
song.
double batter.
This time, sometimes I hit high.
Oh, no, go low, go low. Okay.
I gotta go again. Nice. Easy. Nice. Richard. Oh.
Richard Saul Warman, everybody.
Thanks, man.
Richard Saul Warman.
Richard.
Thanks, Richard.
Power.
Okay, we'll get you out now. We'll get you out. Here we go.
Put on Richard, guys.
Come on, Richard.
Put on the thing. Put on the other
Come on, Richard. Take a bow.
While I'm sliding out of this thing, and it's uncomfortable, really. Aiko Ishiyoko designed a cocoon suit for the U.S. Olympics, which has some thematic relationship to what I'm wearing. And my son Revan is going to model. He looks like Kenny in it. You know, they killed Kenny. And that's a suit for the athletes to keep warm, but to zone out before Olympic performance. Anyway, it's beautifully done. And sent to us by Radical Media. Jill Sabul. Jill, I'll be back. Yeah, just...
You know, this is Space and Place, and I wrote a song about where I live, my space and place. Can I have someone hold this for me up here? Thank you. I know you guys think I must be a very rich superstar. I live like a freshman. I still have a roommate. I even moved to Brooklyn. I still need a roommate. I bet you didn't know I don't make much for this show. And when I go home, I still have a roommate. I cook on a hot plate unless I order pizza. You should see the boxes. This was my dream when I was 13. And now that it's true, I wish I was you. You don't have a roommate. You own your own building. You have a flat screen TV. You never followed your dreams. They're never what they seem. They're never what they seem. they're never what they seem. I live like a freshman. I still have a roommate. We walk to the laundry. Can I do one? All right, should I do a serious or a silly one? Oh, geez. Both, okay. Well, this is serious. This really hurt me, and if you remember the last song I did, "You Will Never Love Me," this was about this affair I had with this person who wasn't she was famous, so she didn't want to admit she was having an affair with me. This is about my intimate relationship with Kathy Lee Gifford. Kathy Lee's in love with me, that's why she left the show. Kathy Lee, she sleeps with me, no one's supposed to know. Plus we run a sweatshop in the attic of our home. We boss around the immigrants, Frank leaves us alone. Kathy Lee, she loves codeine and drinking at the same time. She likes to drive real fast with Cody unbuckled, driving through the stop signs. She wants to be in movies, just like Sharon Stone. We got a hit out on her co-host, jealous of the new show. Oh, Kathy Lee's in love with me. She's on top, Kathy Lee. Thank you. He's going to let me do it. This is a little 1-minute song. But if there's anyone out there, I need someone someone to do my web. If anyone out there. Okay, great. And also, I think there's more of my CDs coming in. And if you buy one, I'll sign them because I know on eBay, I saw one last week for $15, signed. 6 in the morning, been up since 3. I wish I had somebody to rock me to sleep. The sun won't be melting these snowy white sheets. Wish I had somebody to rock me to sleep. Rock me to sleep, rock me to sleep. I wish I had somebody to rock me to sleep. The book on the bedstand, the little TV, the drink and the ashtray keep watch over me. The long dark shadows of the sycamore tree wave and keep me company. Keep me company, company. The long dark hands of the sycamore tree. Take me in your hands and hold me till I close my eyes, till the street lamps die and the traffic rumbles. Rock me to sleep, rock me to sleep. I wish I had my mother. I wish I had my father back. I wish I had my baby. I wish I had somebody to rock me to sleep.
I heard that you're going to stay a little longer.
I'm gonna stay all tomorrow. I'm excited. This is the best thing that's ever happened to me.
What a gift we have in that young lady. What a gift. As many of you know, my mentor is Lou Kahn. And I use the present tense is because he's still my mentor. And he also, I think, was very important to, I know was very important to Moshe and to Frank and to many others. And half a year ago or so, whenever, his son Nathaniel, who was just a baby when Lou died, Lou's 101st birthday would have been about 2 days ago. Yesterday. And Nathaniel's been exercising his childhood memories, his relationship with his father, and he's a filmmaker. And we're going to see some clips of, that was taken the day before Lou died. Some clips of a film that he will be completing, I think, in April or May. And among them is a little interview of, I think, of Moshe and one of Frank. Is Frank in here? Yes. Okay. And Nathaniel Kahn.
Yeah, I'm going to show two clips this evening to you, and I wanted to just introduce them a little bit by telling you about this film journey that I've been on. I wasn't quite a baby when my father died. I was 11, actually.
Oh, I thought you were younger.
No,
Sorry.
but I feel like a baby a lot of times around my father. And I think this journey has been an attempt to get to know him. He died when I was 11, and I didn't know him partly because he didn't live with my family. He wasn't married to my mother. Let's just let it all out. After that song, you have to let it all out. So several years back, it occurred to me that as I'm a filmmaker, that one way to get to know him would be to stop talking about it in therapy and actually make a film about it. So I began this journey. And along the way, I met some remarkable people who knew my father and went to see all of his buildings, which I hadn't seen before. The people that I met ranged tremendously, from several people in this room, Frank and Moshe and Richard, and also people like taxi drivers who drove him around in Philadelphia. And I think I read this story about Yo-Yo Ma, I don't know if he's here, but that a taxi driver once rescued his cello from the back of a taxi that he left it in by mistake. And I think somehow taxi drivers have great benevolence and great wisdom, and some taxi drivers in this film certainly gave me some wonderful wisdom about Lou. So, one thing I want to...
It's interesting, Lou couldn't drive, and
Right,
he never learned how to drive, so he had a special little pass he was very proud of, which allowed him to sit in the front seat of taxis, because he didn't like to sit in the back seat. And all the taxi drivers in Philadelphia knew him.
And we found these wonderful taxi drivers, and in fact, he confided in them in ways that he never confided in his close friends. So we found them, and they're in the film. I don't have them for you tonight. One thing I wanted to say about filmmaking is, about this film, in thinking about some of the wonderful talks we've heard here, Michael Motion, and some of the talks about music, this idea that there is a narrative line, and that music exists in time, and that Michael's juggling exists in time. A film also exists in time. It's an experience that you should go through emotionally. And in making this film, I felt that so many of the documentaries I'd seen were all about sort of learning something or knowledge, or sort of driven by talking heads and driven by ideas. And I wanted this film to be driven by emotions and really to follow my journey. So instead of doing the talking head thing, instead it's composed of scenes. And we meet people along the way. We only meet them once. They don't come back several times. So it really chronicles a journey. It's something like life that once you get in it, you can't get out. And I think that that's something that became clear to me yesterday in thinking about the way I heard music talked about, that it really is an experience, and it's an emotional experience, and it exists perhaps only in time, and a film only exists in time. There are two clips I want to show you. The first one is a kind of hodgepodge. It's just four little moments with three of the people who are here tonight. It's not the way they occur in the film because they're part of much larger scenes, but they play off each other in a wonderful way. And that ends with a little clip of my father, of Lou, talking about something that was very dear to him, which is the accidents of life. And I think he felt that life was, the greatest things in life were accidental and perhaps not planned at all. And those three clips will be followed by a scene of perhaps what to me is really his greatest building, which is a building in Dhaka, Bangladesh. He built the capital over there. And incidentally, Richard, I know you're retiring after this year. Dhaka could really use a TED conference, just one. But the thing to worry about over there, of course, is they don't pay very well at all. In fact, they never paid Lou, and that's sort of why he ended up bankrupt, one of the reasons. But I think you'll enjoy this building. It's never been seen. We were the first, it's been photographed, still photographed, but never been photographed by a film crew. We were the first film crew in there. So you'll see images of this remarkable building. A couple things to keep in mind when you see it. It was built entirely by hand. I think they got a crane the last year. And it was built entirely by hand off bamboo scaffolding, people carrying these baskets of concrete on their heads, dumping them in the forms. It is the capital of the country, and it took 23 years to build, which is something they seem to be very proud of over there. It took as long as the Taj Mahal. Unfortunately, it took so long that Lou never saw it finished. He died in 1974. The building was finished in 1983. So it continued on for many years after he died. And so think about that when you see that building, that sometimes the things we strive for so hard in life we never get to see finished. And that really struck me about my father in the sense that he had such belief that somehow doing these things, giving in the way that he gave, that something good would come out of it. Even in the middle of a war, there was a war with Pakistan at one point, and the construction stopped totally, and he kept working because he felt, well, when the war's done, they'll need this building. So those are the two clips I'm going to show, and roll the tape.
I remember hearing him talk at Penn, and I came home and I said to my father and mother, I just met this man, he doesn't have much work, and he's sort of ugly, funny voice, and he's a teacher at school. I know you've never heard of him, but just mark this day that someday you will hear of him, because he's really an amazing man.
I heard he had some kind of a fling with Ingrid Bergman, is that true?
If he did, it was a very lucky man. Did you hear that, really?
Yeah, because when he was in Rome.
He was a real nomad. And, you know, when I knew him, when I was in the office, he would come in from a trip and he would be in the office for 2-3 days intensely, and he would pack up and go, and, you know, he'd be in the office till 3 in the morning working with us. And there was this kind of sense of the nomad in him. I mean, you know, as tragic as his death was in a railway station, it was so consistent with his life, you know. I mean, I often think I'm going to die in a plane, or I'm going to die in an airport, or, you know, die jogging without an identification on me. I don't know why I sort of carry that from that memory of the way he died, but he was a sort of a nomad at heart.
How accidental our existences are, really, and how full of influence by circumstance.
We are the morning workers who come all the time here and enjoy the working, scenic beauty and the atmosphere. And this is the nicest place of Bangladesh. We are proud of it.
You're proud of it?
Yes. This is the national image of this.
Do you know anything about the architect?
Architect, I have heard about him. He's a top-ranking architect.
Well, actually, I'm here because I'm the architect's son. He was my father.
Oh, that Louis Farrakhan.
Yeah.
Oh, you
No,
are
not Louis Farrakhan, Louis Kahn.
Louis Khan.
It's different.
Yes.
Louis Farrakhan.
Oh, I heard about him.
Your father, is he alive?
No, he's been dead for 25 years.
Very pleased to welcome you.
Thank you. You never saw it finished, Bob.
He didn't.
No. You never saw this.
It was almost impossible, a building for a country like ours. In 30, 50 years back, it was nothing, only paddy fields. And since we invited him here, he felt that he has got a responsibility. He wanted to be Moses here. He gave us democracy. He's not a political man, but in disguise, he has given us the institution for democracy, from where we can rise. And that way it is so relevant. He didn't care for how much money this country has or whether he will be able to ever finish this building, but somehow he has been able to do it, build it here. And this is the largest project he has got in here, the poorest country in the world.
It cost
So
him
I
his
think-
life.
Yeah, he paid his life for this. And that is why he is great and we'll remember him. But he was also human. Now his failure to satisfy the family life is an inevitable association of great people. But I think his son will understand this and will have no sense of grudge or sense of being neglected, I think. He cared in a very different manner, but it takes a lot of time to understand that. In social aspect of his life, he was just like a child. He was not at all matured. He could not say no to anything. And that is why that he cannot say no to things. We got this building today. You see, only that way you can be able to understand him. There is no other shortcut, no other way to really understand him. But I think he has given us this building, and we feel all the time for him. That's why he has given love for us. He could not probably give the right kind of love for you, but for us, he has given the people the right kind of love. That is important. And you have to understand that. He had enormous amount of love. He loved everybody. To love everybody, he sometimes do not see the very closest ones. And that is inevitable for men of his stature.
Was born the same year. And it was so wonderful to meet him many years later and develop a friendship.
And he
Very
looks like
moving.
Lou.
Looks like Lou.
Yes.
I feel a bit frustrated because there's so much I want to talk about. I want to start by talking about kind of the I believe of what really matters to me in architecture, and that'll take at least 10 minutes, so we'll pass. But sort of on a related subject, I was thinking yesterday as we watched the car presentations and car designers that it troubled me that the term cultural architect troubled me. Wouldn't it be better to just be a great transportation architect and then the culture would benefit? And on the same tone, it seemed to me that what's really important for us in a conference such as this is to remember the difference between marketing and design. They're not the same. I also would like to talk about what I feel are the forces that are changing architecture daily as we speak. And one of them, which I think is overwhelming, is what I would call the force of megascale. And it seems to me that the bigness and size and density are transforming every building type. We talked today about workstations and chairs. 80% of the people who work in office environments in North America don't see daylight during their working day. And that is megascale. That is a transformation of almost every building type. That'll be next year. So what I'd like to talk about is something really that was very dear to Kahn's heart, which is how do we discover what is really particular about a project? How do you discover the uniqueness of a project, as unique as a person? Because it seems to me that finding this uniqueness has to do with dealing with the whole force of globalization, that the particular is central to finding the uniqueness of place and the uniqueness of a program in a building. And so I'll take you to Wichita, Kansas, where I was asked some years ago to do a science museum on a site right downtown by the river. And I thought the secret of the site is to make the building of the river, part of the river. Unfortunately, though, the site was separated from the river by McLean's Boulevard. So I suggested, let's reroute McLean's. And that gave birth instantly to Friends of McLean's Boulevard. And it took 6 months to reroute it. The first image I showed the building committee was this observatory, astronomical observatory, the Jantar Mantra in Jaipur, because I talked about what makes a building of science. And it seemed to me that this structure, complex, rich, and yet totally rational, it's an instrument, had something to do with science. And somehow building for science should be different and unique and speak of that. And so my first sketch after I left was to say, let's cut the channel and make an island and make an island building. I got all excited and came back, and they sort of looked at me in dismay and said, an island? This used to be an island, Ackerman Island. And we filled in the channel during the Depression to create jobs. And so the process began, and they said, you can't put it all on an island. Some of it has to be on the mainland because we don't want to turn our back to the community. And there emerged a design, the galleries sort of forming an island, and you could walk through them or on the roof. And there were all kinds of exciting features. You could come in through the landside buildings, walk through the galleries into playgrounds in the landscape. If you were cheap, you could walk on top of the bridge to the roof, peek in the exhibits, and then get totally seduced, come back and pay the $5 admission. And the client was happy, was sort of happy because we were $4 million over the budget, but essentially happy, but I was still troubled. And I was troubled because I felt this was capricious. It was complex, but there was something capricious about its complexity. It was what I would say compositional complexity. And I felt that if I had to fulfill what I talked about, a building for science, there had to be some kind of a generating idea, some kind of a generating geometry. And this gave birth to the idea of having a toroidal generating geometry with its center, one with its center deep in the earth for the landside building, and a toroid with its center in the sky for the island building. A toroid, for those who don't know, is the surface of a donut, or for some of us, a bagel. And out of this idea started spitting off many, many kind of variations of different plans and possibilities. And then the plan itself evolved in relationship to the exhibits. And you see here the intersection of the plan with the toroidal geometry. And finally, the building, this is the model. And when there were complaints about budget, I said, well, it's worth doing the island because you get twice for your money. Reflections. And here's the building as it opened with a channel overlooking downtown. And as seen from downtown, and the bike routes going right through the building, so those traveling the river would see the exhibits and be drawn to the building. The toroidal geometry made for a very efficient building. Every beam in this building is the same radius, all laminated wood. Every wall, every concrete wall is resisting the stresses and supporting the building. Every piece of the building works. These are the galleries with the light coming in through the skylights. And at night and on opening day. Going back to 1976. In 1976, I was asked to design a children's memorial museum in the Holocaust Museum in Yad Vashem in Jerusalem, which you see here, the campus. And I was asked to do a building, and I was given all the artifacts of clothing and drawings, and I felt very troubled. I worked on it for months, and I couldn't deal with it because I felt people were coming out of the historic museum. They are totally saturated with information, and to see yet another museum with information, it would make them just unable to digest. And so I made a counter proposal. I said, no building. There was a cave on the site. We tunnel into the hill. You descend through the rock into an underground chamber. There's an anteroom with photographs of children who perished. And then you come into a large space. There is a single candle flickering in the center. By an arrangement of reflective glasses, it reflects into infinity in all direction. You walk through the space. A voice reads the names, ages, and place of birth of the children. This voice does not repeat for 6 months. And then you descend to light and to the north and to life. Well, they said people won't understand. They think it's a discotheque. You can't do that. And they shelved the project. And it sat there for 10 years. And then one day, Abe Spiegel from Los Angeles, who had lost his 2-year-old son at Auschwitz, came, saw the model, wrote the check, and it got built 10 years later. So many years after that, in 1998, I was on one of my monthly trips to Jerusalem, and I got a call from the foreign ministry saying, we've got the chief minister of the Punjab here. He is on a state visit. We took him on our visit to Yad Vashem. We took him to the Children's Memorial. He was extremely moved. He's demanding to meet the architect. Could you come down and meet him in Tel Aviv? And I went down. And Chief Minister Badel said to me, we Sikhs have suffered a great deal, as you have Jews. I was very moved by what I saw today. We are going to build our national museum to tell the story of our people. We're about to embark on that. I'd like you to come and design it. And so, it's one of those things that you don't take too seriously. But 2 weeks later, I was in this little town, Anandpur Sahib, outside Chandigarh, the capital of the Punjab, and the temple, and also next to it the fortress that the last guru of the Sikhs, Guru Govind, died in as he wrote the Khalsa, which is their holy scripture. And I got to work. And they took me somewhere down there, 9 kilometers away from the town and the temple, and said, that's where we have chosen location. And I said, this just doesn't make any sense. The pilgrims come here by the hundreds of thousands. They're not going to get in trucks and buses and go down there. Let's get back to the town and walk to the site. And I recommended they do it right there on that hill and this hill and bridge all the way into the town. And as things are a little easier in India, the site was purchased within a week and we were on working. And my proposal was to split the museum into two. The permanent exhibits at one end, the auditoria and library and changing exhibitions on the other, to flood the valley into a series of water gardens and to link it all to the fort and to the downtown. And the structures rise from the sand cliffs. They're built in concrete and sandstones. The roofs are stainless steel. They are facing south and reflecting light towards the temple itself. Pedestrians crisscross from one side to the other. And as you come from the north, it is all masonry growing out of the sand cliffs as you come from the Himalayas and evoking the tradition of the fortress. And then I went away for 4 months, and there was going to be a groundbreaking. And I came back, and lo and behold, a little model I'd left behind had been built 10 times bigger for public display on the site, and the bridge was built. We didn't do working drawings. And 500,000 people gathered for the celebrations. You can see them on the site itself as the foundations are beginning. I was renamed Safdie Singh. And there it is under construction. There are 1,800 workers at work, and it will be finished in 2 years. Back to Yad Vashem, 3 years ago, after all this episode began, Yad Vashem decided to rebuild completely the historic museum because now Washington was built, the Holocaust Museum in Washington, and that museum is so much more comprehensive in terms of information, and Yad Vashem needs to deal with 3 million visitors a year at this point. They said, let's rebuild the museum. But of course, the Sikhs might give you a job on a platter. The Jews make it hard. International competition, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And again, I felt kind of uncomfortable with the notion that a building the size of the Washington building, 50,000 square feet, will sit on that fragile hill, and that we will go into galleries, rooms with doors and sort of familiar rooms to tell the story of the Holocaust. And I proposed that we cut through the mountain. That was my first sketch. Just cut the whole museum through the mountain, enter from one side of the mountain, come out on the other side of the mountain, and then bring light through the mountain into the chambers. And here you see the model, a reception building and some underground parking. You cross a bridge, you enter this triangular room, 60 feet high, which cuts right into the hill and extends right through as you go towards the north. And all of it then, all the galleries are underground, and you see the openings for the light. And at night, just one line of light cuts through the mountain, which is a skylight on top of that triangle. And all the galleries, as you move through them and so on, are below grade. And there are chambers carved in the rock, concrete walls, stone, the natural rock when possible, with the light shafts. This is actually a Spanish a quarry, which sort of inspired the kind of spaces that these galleries could be. And then coming towards the north, it opens up, it bursts out of the mountain into again a view of light and of the city and of the Jerusalem hills. I'd like to conclude with a project I've been working on for 2 months. It's the headquarters for the Institute of Peace in Washington, the U.S. Institute of Peace. The site chosen is across from the Lincoln Memorial. You see it there. directly on the mall. It's the last building on the mall, on axis of the Roosevelt Bridge that comes in from Virginia. That too was a competition, and it is something I'm just beginning to work on. But one recognized the kind of uniqueness of the site. If there were to be anywhere in Washington, there would be an office building, a conference center, a place for negotiating peace, and so on, all of which the building is. But by virtue of the choice of putting it on the mall and by the Lincoln Memorial, this becomes the structure that is the symbol of peace on the mall. And that was a lot of heat to deal with. The first sketch recognizes that the building is many spaces, spaces where research goes on, conference centers, a public building because there will be a museum devoted to peacemaking. And these are the drawings that we submitted for the competition, the plan showing the spaces which radiate outwards from the entry. You see the structure as in the sequence of structures on the mall, very transparent and inviting and looking in. And then as you enter it again, looking in all directions towards the city. And what I felt about that building is that it really was a building that had to do with a lightness of being, to quote Kundera, that it had to do with whiteness, it has to do with a certain dynamic quality, and it had to do with optimism. And this is where it is. It's sort of evolving. Studies for the structure of the roof, which demand maybe new materials, how to make it white, how to make it translucent, how to make it glowing, how to make it not capricious. And here studying in 3 dimensions how to give some kind again of a order, a structure, a sort of something which is not something you feel you could just change because you stopped the design of that particular process. And so it goes. I'd like to conclude by saying something. I'd like to conclude by relating all of what I've said to the term beauty. And I know it is not a fashionable term these days, and certainly not fashionable in the discourse of architecture schools. But it seems to me that all this, in one way or the other, is a search for beauty. Beauty in the most profound sense of fit. I have a quote that I like by a morphologist, 1917. Theodore Cook, who said, "Beauty connotes humanity. We call a natural object beautiful because we see that its form expresses fitness, the perfect fulfillment of function." Well, I would have said the perfect fulfillment of purpose. Nevertheless, beauty as the kind of fit, something that tells us that all the forces that have to do with our natural environment have been fulfilled, and our human environment for that. 20 years ago, in a conference Richard and I were together, I wrote a poem which seems to me to still hold for me today. He who seeks truth shall find beauty. He who seeks beauty shall find vanity. He who seeks order shall find gratification. He who seeks gratification shall be disappointed. He who considers himself the servant of his fellow beings shall find the joy of self-expression. He who seeks self-expression shall fall into the pit of arrogance. Arrogance is incompatible with nature. Through nature, the nature of the universe and the nature of man, we shall seek truth. If we seek truth, we shall find beauty. Thank you very much.
Their indulgence and your patience, because we are running a little late, and as you know, I try to run on time, but I'd like them to move on as much as they can. I don't want to cut them off because each one was chosen very carefully.
We have Christopher Deem, who's responsible for the Airstream design and the new one, the Bambi, and also the one downstairs. Murray Moss, who has the penultimate, if not ultimate, design store in New York. Tom Harchi, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, but he's with Nike, and he's sort of doing a anti-corporate presentation. Frank Nuovo just had a big profile in the New Yorker, and who's the worldwide design head of Nokia, one of the ubiquitous design items in the world. And David Kelly, formerly head and still involved with IDEO, perhaps the finest industrial designer, one of the finest industrial design companies in the United States, for sure. That's our lineup. It's a terrific lineup. And then we break for a wonderful dinner. The food is always extraordinary. Lovely dinner at, I think, the best restaurant in town, Montreal. And we take over the whole place, and there's sushi, sashimi. There's all kinds of other food there, good wine, good company, and it's very close by. So that's the evening. Christopher Deem.
Thank you. Hi. My name is Christopher Deem, and I am an architect. I'm embarrassed to say that after Mr. Softy was up here, but primarily how I make my living and what I do is as a furniture designer. And in that combination of architect, furniture designer, I have a history of working on very detail-intensive, compressed, small projects. And I, through that, was asked to take a look at the Airstream trailer and kind of redesign a classic American icon. And so tonight I'd just kind of like to go through the process of how all that came to be. And it literally got rolling 2 years ago. I was asked by Wilson Art International, a plastic laminate company, which makes the largest plastic laminate company in the world, and they asked me to design a trade show booth for exhibition at the International Contemporary Furniture Fair in New York in 2000. And so looking at their three main markets for their product, which were basically transportation design, interiors, and furniture, we came up with a solution of taking an old Airstream trailer and gutting it and trying to portray laminate and a trailer in kind of a fresh, new, contemporary look, which was kind of a challenge. So up to the point when this trailer showed up at my studio in Berkeley, or my shop in Berkeley, I'd actually never stepped foot in an Airstream trailer or any other trailer. So the challenge then became, or my attitude was, okay, I can look at this, since I've never been in one, I've never traveled in one, I can be somebody that can look at this in a totally fresh perspective and see if I can optimize it in its most idealistic fashion. And so I really started to analyze this. That's my dog, that cheap little gratuitous little cute dog there. But I decided I had to really look at, do some research and really figure out what had gone wrong somewhere along the history of Airstream. And what I discovered in these interiors is that there was a disconnect between the exterior shell and the interior architecture of the pieces, and that the exterior, the shell, was originally conceived as a lightweight, modern, futuristic, high-tech pod for, hurtling down the freeway. And the interiors were completely out of sync with that. And in fact, it appeared like they referenced something completely different i.e. a mountain cabin, was kind of the aesthetic that they used to represent the ultimate idea of escape. And that seemed really like a crisis to me, that they had never been able to develop a vocabulary about escape and about travel and modernity in this trailer that was consistent with the shell. So I took it upon myself in this little project as an exercise to try and reunite the shell and the interior in a consistent vision. I was given 7 weeks from the day that thing arrived at my shop in Berkeley to design it, remodel, and get it to New York. And so after that panic kind of set in, we just decided that, and I hired a good friend of mine to help me with this, that I just really needed to do some archaeology in the trailer itself to try and figure out what's authentic in an Airstream trailer and what feels like it has true purpose and utility. So the first thing I did was we got in there physically, and Shaw and I physically built this thing together. We just started stripping out everything that was tacked on, added, non-purposeful, and tried to get to its essence. So specifically, we stripped out all the vinyl and Zolatone paint that was covering up this just fantastic aluminum shell. We took off all the visible hardware and trim that was kind of doing the country cabin thing, and just tried to get at its essence. And this is really typical of the way I work, that although I have an architectural background, I kind of got very much into building and designing furniture and making this stuff myself. And so I've always maintained a physical shop where I build all my initial furniture prototypes before we go into production. And I'm very hands-on, and I typically immerse myself into a project so that I focus on one project at a time, and I do things in real time, real scale, so that there's not a dilution of my ideas in the process. And working that way, I find that I can actually gain a really high level of specificity and subtlety in the work, because we're literally moving things in the centimeters when we're working. Given the time deadline, these are the only 2 drawings that I actually gave to Wilson Art to tell them what I was doing, from when they sent me the trailer to this is all they saw before it got to New York. So it was just literally, I took some photographs in the space and kind of traced over them and said we were going to do this, and it was really just a panic just to kind of get them on board with giving me some freedom. And they totally trusted me to do this project, and it was really quite amazing that not only could I remodel this trailer for them to be a showcase for their company, but they also let me determine what the trailer was about. And so I came up with a lot of ideas about that. So as we worked, I literally drew on the walls of the trailer, mocked it up in cardboard. We'd come in and cut, decide things were wrong, pull it out, put it back in. But the main goal was to kind of smooth out the interior and begin to speak about motion and mobility and independence. And those are the 2 ideals that I think were lost in Airstream's previous interiors, these ideas of mobility and independence. And I felt like I wanted to reconnect the interior with the exterior through those means. So what I discovered in the trailer, that the interior casework was just kind of stuck on like barnacles on the interior of this thing that really broke up the flow of space and didn't make any kind of aesthetic sense. It was like trying to, shove your grandmother's kitchen into a 747. But so we started, what I found also was that the floor plan of the trailers were actually really well laid out, very efficient, nice relationship between bed, kitchen, and a dinette, and that's all really that is in this trailer. So I kept the floor plan the same and just started sculpting and cutting apart the existing casework and shifting it and layering it and really kind of jimming it around to make it seem like it made some sense. But the biggest difficulty on one of these trailers is that when you're designing, there's actually no logical place to stop and start materials. Because of the continuous form of the trailer, there's no such things as two walls and a ceiling coming together where you can change materials and shapes. So that became really a challenge. And the compounding that is in this trailer that I was doing for a laminate company, the material of choice that I was trying to highlight only bends in 2 dimensions. And it's a compound curved interior. So what I had to devise was a way of fooling the eye into believing that all these panels are curved with the shell, and we worked out kind of a way of using tangents in geometry. But what I came up with was a series of second skins that basically float over the aluminum shell. And what I was trying to do there was direct your eye in the space kind of so that you would perceive the geometry in a different way and that the casework wouldn't break up the space. And so these second skins or these floating panels would really control your experience of the space. And they ended up also defining zones within the trailer, because I didn't want to divide up the space as far as this is the bedroom, this is the kitchen. So we had to give visual cues that would say, okay, you're in the kitchen, with the white panel above. You're in the dinette with the black panels, or the bedroom with the baby blue. So they also gave us a way to run power and rewire the trailer without tearing out the skin, so they function as an electrical chase. So in this trailer, what, the palette is pretty pop. And part of the reason for that is we were trying to showcase Wilson Art's technology, which is they can do plain laminates, simulated wood grain laminates, and they have a new technology for digitally printing laminates that you can print stuff. So part of this kind of wacky sensibility is trying to showcase their laminate and what it's possible to do. So there was a lot of experimentation also physically with laminate, just to see what kind of radiuses we could get, what kind of bends we could do, how could we do this affordably and cheaply. Number one, because I don't have a lot of sophisticated machinery in my shop, but also the people that are going to specify and build with this don't have anything more sophisticated than a router. So I really took that very seriously, that this should be able, even though it's a showpiece, be able to be built by a regular carpenter. And so we invented techniques for bending cold without the use of presses or expensive machinery to do that. Let's see, that's kind of more of the interior. So that's the trailer pretty much finished. And on the door is one of the digital prints that Wilson Art is able to do there. A friend of mine designed this pattern for them, and they can do a one-off pattern where you literally send them a file, they print it out, and you don't have a minimum, just one sheet, and they'll print it up and spit it out. So that trailer led to another commission, and I was very fortunate to be asked by a gentleman named Teruo Kurosaki in Tokyo, Japan, who owns a furniture company called Ide, to participate in what's called Tokyo Designers Block. And it's a week of furniture design events in Tokyo in October. And he asked me, after he saw the last one, to ship him 2 trailers to Tokyo. And he said, one, he would like to make a real trailer functioning, and we would sell that one to pay for this trailer, which he said, this trailer number 2, you have a blank slate. You can do anything you want, but just give me something fun for the designer block week. So what I decided to do was I made anybody that's been to these design weeks, well, it's like TED if it was all over Monterey, but every night there's a different event. And so what I decided to do is I made a mobile DJ pod that would just travel around Tokyo. We would hitch it up to the truck and take it to a different opening every night and just pull out the speakers and throw the party for every night's event. So this trailer housed 2 turntables and a mobile phone, mobile home. No, it was 2 turntables, mixer, wet bar, fridge, integrated sound system. It's got a huge couch that's like, fits like quite a few people. And basically, we just had a great time with this. But what it led me to start thinking about was that the typical trailer in a production sense is designed to standardize your experience. You standardize what you need as far as kitchen, bathroom, sleeping, and that's kind of not what you really want in a sense of escape and adventure. You want something not standard. And so in this trailer, I took it upon myself to think about travel and escape in an idiosyncratic sense. And so a lot of these ideas kind of migrated into what you'll see later, the production trailers for Airstream. But these ideas of idiosyncrasy are very interesting to me, how individuals or spaces mutate for an individual's need. And in this, we came up with just kind of a fantasy scenario of a DJ traveling around the States that would maybe, collect records and go on tour. So, but for me, it was really gratifying to see this in Tokyo, in use, pulled around the city with a lot of people in it. We had like 16 people in it at one time, just the whole thing bouncing around like crazy. It was really actually quite fun. So this brings us to where Airstream is today. This is actually how they were producing their interiors and still are producing these interiors up to the time that I started consulting to them. And they're a 70-year-old company in a real sticky situation that basically their first-time buyer is about 54 years old. Their average buyer, their core buyer, is well into their 60s, and most of them, unfortunately, are dying off. And their market is really decreasing. The numbers of literally, they'll tell you that they are dying off. So they're kind of in a desperate straits to kind of get younger people interested in these things, and over the years they've kind of become very unappealing to be in. So they came to me and said, well, what can we do to freshen this thing up? And let's, do you think kids, skateboarders, surfers, rock climbers would use these things? And I said, well, not in that interior. But it does, it's amazing how little from 1954, the first one I showed, it's changed into these. It's just, now it's contact paper. So anyway, for this, instead of, I didn't think I could get away with 2 little napkin sketches. So we modeled the entire trailer and all of its parts digitally in 3D modeling so that we could really look at every component. And the reason we did it, and because Airstream doesn't even do anything on computer, really. And is that in this compound curved space, it's really difficult to look at things just in section and elevation and plan because your intersections and your dimensions just don't work. So we modeled the whole thing, pardon me, digitally, and really, in fact, used a lot of our computer drawings to generate templates for these trailers. The trailers themselves are actually hand-built, very, very hand-built, and all the casework is hand-scribed in uniquely. So you can't just cut 100 parts for 100 trailers. You have to cut them big, and every single one is hand-fit into the trailer still. So that was part of the problem, is that they didn't want to go to a componentized system. So I was in New York, and
could I wind this up fairly soon?
Okay, yeah. I was in New York, and I didn't realize until somebody actually asked me, "Oh, how's it feel to be working on a classic American icon?" And until that moment, it hadn't occurred to me. So I kind of thought and realized, oh yes, I am kind of screwing with an icon. And so what I decided, though, is that the shell is what's iconic and the interior is not. So what I tried to do on the exterior is preserve everything that's aluminum, authentic. I stripped off all the graphics, all the trim rails that were covering the rivets, and tried to stay with things that are uniquely Airstream. So it's a really stripped down look. So I've gone to a lot of these rallies where they have a lot of people, and the thing that I find when people step into an Airstream for the first time is that they usually say something like, "Oh, wow, yeah, I could live like this. That's all I need." And people are amazed by this psychology of efficiency that are in these trailers. So I'm really trying to preserve that sense of wonder that people have when they first step into a trailer. So anyway, I went out to Airstream about 6 times during this process of building this prototype, and it's called the Bambi prototype. And I thought, finally, oh yeah, great, big company, I'm going to work with somebody with money for tooling and molding. And I walked into their prototype facility, and it's exactly like my shop, only like bigger, and same tools, same thing. So the problem became, and they set this dilemma to me, that you have to design the interior using only our existing technology, and there's no money for tooling or molding. And so when you think back to how their interior is, that photo I showed, that's the level of technology I had to work with on this. So what I tried to do is view this trailer as something that there are 2 conflicting ideas in trailers. There's one idea that I'm going to leave it all behind and I'm going to get my trailer. And then on the other hand, there's I'm going to take it all with me. And so the design really became about resolving those 2 issues. And so the way I reconciled that is I feel that aesthetically you can leave it all behind. That's what the trailer is about. And you can take it with you, but it will be kind of invisible, or it will be as low-key as possible. But so everything became very stripped down and very functional. I wanted the trailer to feel like a well-balanced tool in your hand, something that would enable travel and or enable adventure instead of insulating you from it. So all the devices I used here were to make it feel that way. I stripped off left off all the vinyl on the interior.
Christopher, can you please wind this down?
Sure. Okay. Stripped it all off, kept the lights low, made a beautiful minimalist interior. This is the one downstairs. Please go into it, check it out. And there it is. That's the Bambi 16. Hope you
I'm not naturally a very whiny person. A lot of people know me, I guess, out there. But to be perfectly honest with you, my job in this whole sort of chain here of this designy whiny process is really not held in very high regard. You know, people treat a retailer, which is almost hard to confess to being, as being like a troll under the bridge, which is basically that I have this stuff and you don't, and you can't have it unless you give me X amount of money, and that's the whole purpose for me. And, or worse, which is that to be called a marketer, a merchandiser, like some sort of a con man. I do think that this is a grown-up job and that there is a contribution to be somehow made. And I went into this whole thing for a couple reasons. One is because it sort of fit. But secondly, it was sort of interesting to me because I'm not really a stupid person, that nobody wanted to go into this because it was held to be such a junior kind of an occupation. If I had to, oh, there's my name. If I had to say, like, what it is my job is to create an audience. And I don't mean customers. I mean an audience like in the theater, like people who come in order to like look and listen and see something, and not just people who come because they have an hour to kill before going to the movie or because they want to use my toilet. And this whole audience thing, which I would like to just talk about, is something which is close to me because I've always wanted an audience. I used to be an actor, like a really long time ago, 7 years ago. But I used to be an actor. And it didn't go too good, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, it kind of did. And I was an actor for not that long, but over a period of time. But I started when I was like 5 or 6. And I stopped when I was sort of 26 or something like this. So I went through the whole process of it and learned to have this tremendous regard for an audience. I have a lot of respect for an audience. But I had, in my journey, like it's very fashionable to say, to becoming a retailer, the hideous retailer, I had some very, very weird experiences as an actor. I started out as an actor at Horan Camp of the theater arts. I don't know if anybody here, God, I hope not, actually went to Horan Camp in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin. It was also called Fun in the Sun. And what it was, and I went there, I think when I was 6 is when I started, and I was there until like I was about 12. And what happened at this camp was, first of all, everybody was a star. Everybody played the lead in these full-length Broadway musicals, which we did for a paying audience for this resort that was adjacent to the camp. And we performed in this theater called the Forrest Tucker Music Theater for reasons I won't even go into. Everybody was a star and got to play the lead. But the deal was there were very few boys. I mean, it was like an acting camp. I mean, it said in the brochure you would go there in order to like act, sing, and dance. So it didn't have a lot of like straight boys going, and even we little gay boys were few and far between. But there were like a lot of girls. And so what happens is the deal would be, like, for example, I always played Billy Bigelow in Carousel. It was very popular for years. And, you know, the female character opposite of Billy Bigelow is Julie Jordan. And I would always be like the whole Billy Bigelow. But there would be like 12 Julie Jordans. And every Julie Jordan had like a little thing, like this. Every Julie Jordan had 15 minutes, okay? And so what happened was kind of like I would, the blocking was sort of weird because I would start my Billy Bigelow, you know, the beginning of the thing, you know, you're a queer one, Julie Jordan. I'd have the first Julie Jordan thing happening over on stage right, and then I would have sort of like this, like 10 minutes with the first Julie Jordan to sort of like do our scene, the first Julie Jordan scene, until we would get to like stage left. And then this really weird thing would happen, would be Julie Jordan would, like, I'd go off the stage and I'd come right back on with Julie Jordan number 2. And what happened was, which I forgot to tell you, was this guy who owned the camp, whose name was Byron, but you had to call him Uncle Byron. Again, I won't even go there. But this guy would come out and he would say, I can't believe I'm talking about it, but he would say, all the Julie Jordans will be wearing like white blouses and blue pinafores. So you would know that even though one Julie Jordan was like Asian and the other one was like black, that was Julie Jordan. But for me, if you kind of put yourself in my shoes, it's rather odd that I'm supposed to ignore the fact when I'm 6 years old that Julie Jordan has totally changed. But like 12 times, because you get another little Julie Jordan over here, and you get another little Julie Jordan over here. Okay, so this is what I mean by it didn't go so good. Okay, what happened was then you get the picture. I get to high school, and this kind of schizophrenic training, you know, continues because I naturally join the dramatic reading contest. I don't know if anybody ever had that, if I'm my age, I'm 53, that when they went to high school, but that was also extremely odd, but I didn't know that that was odd. And what you do is, of course, it suited me because I played all the parts. And what happens is, I specialized in Inherit the Wind, you know, the Scopes trial. And I would play, you know, I did the trial scene for my dramatic reading contest. I went like all the time, all year I would go on weekends with buses to these contests. I always came in third. Story of my life. So what happened was, by the way, I mean, just this woman who played, the girl who played, did the scene from Anastasia, always came in first. And what happens was, I would do the Scopes trial, and I would just play 2 characters. I would play the Clarence Darrow part, you know, the monkey trial, and I would play the William Jennings Bryan part. And what happens is I would stand there, and this was just considered normal, you know, I don't know. And I would stand there and I would assume a pose, you know, like with eye contact for Clarence Darrow talking to William Jennings Bryan. And then I would like change and I would like respond to myself as William Jennings Bryan's, you know, talking back to Clarence Darrow. And I would go back and forth and back and forth. So this was, I thought, very, 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 very odd training. And then, I go to NYU, professional acting school, finally, and I'm immediately cast in the roles of insane people, which becomes, which completely became like my handle, my specialty. And honestly, the first year that I was at NYU, I was very, very good. You know, you'd work on something like a whole year, and I was actually physically in this straitjacket. And then the really sicko thing happened, which is that I fell in love, for the first time. I had this lover, this guy who was like a friend of one of the teachers who went to this performance, who was a psychiatrist. And then I had this relationship. I had this relationship with this psychiatrist. And then at the same time, he would like come see me. I would be in this play. It went on for a long time. I'd be in a straitjacket. Then we would go back, and we had this relationship, and it was very, 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 very bad because we would sit like in his office, and I would be in my Eames patient's chair, and he would be like in the Eames doctor chair. In any case, I should have really just like dropped it, but I went on a little bit longer, and this was in the 70s, in the early 70s, and it was so unsuitable to me, although I liked this audience stuff. But what was so unsuitable to me was the fact that I am not, by definition, a loose person. I hate trust exercises. And I hate that. I hate theater in the round. I hate audience participation, you know what I mean? Like you come up, I hate it so much. And in that period in the 70s, when you were an actor was king. And you would write the play. You would do everything that you would do the whole thing, okay? And I was very fortunate because I really wasn't bad. And I got in this troupe. We had troupes, and they would be funded by the United States government very well. And you would rehearse something for like 2 years. And then you would perform it for 10 times, And so I was in this troupe this one time that Joe Chaikin, this very, very well-known and really fantastic guy, director, whatever, had created this troupe. And of course, we, the actors, were, doing the whole thing. I mean, we didn't need a playwright. We were like creating the play from our hideous improvisations. And so at that, where it really got bad was I made very bad choices. Am I done? Am I done? Huh? Am I done?
No, but in about 5 minutes.
Okay. Okay. God, I didn't even talk about like the design thing. Okay.
Talk a little about your design.
No, but I just have to tell you what happened with this thing about these choices. Where it really just capped the whole deal was I was in this troupe, and we had to write our own character. Okay, so I wrote this character. I mean, I'm so stupid. The character that I came up with that I was gonna like rehearse for 2 years was called The Man Who Lives Under a Rock. I mean, like, duh. Like I was like stuck in this hot cardboard box. But the thing, and then I got into this messenger thing. I had this thing about playing the messenger, which is really, I'll wind this, okay. But well, what happened, I mean, I had so much to say, but see, I don't really, whatever. This messenger thing, I had this thing about playing a messenger, not like a, bicycle messenger, but like a messenger in the Greek theater. And my deal, and I had an audition speech, which actually got me a job as a messenger. I mean, not as a messenger, but a messenger speech. And what happened was I had this idea that I would like go onto a stage, and like you would all be there. You would be like the townsfolk or whatever it is, and you'd be in the forum or whatever the deal is, and you would all, be like doing really important things, and saying important things, whatever you're doing, and I would come in and you would go, oh God, like that's the messenger. And you would completely shut up and you would come over to me and you would get very, very quiet because you knew that I had something extremely important, information to pass on to you. And I would get down on my knee because I respected you, and I had this thing, my lords, most honored citizens of Thebes, what deeds have I to tell of, you to hear? And I would proceed to explain to you something that had happened elsewhere, some information about something which I felt was critical information for you to know. And my job would be to make you see what I saw, make you hear everything that I heard, make you understand what I understood. And I've always wanted to do that. I've always wanted everybody to shut up and listen to me and allow me to inform them as eloquently as I possibly could of things that they do not know. And that, after a lot of years of therapy, is what I finally understood is the reason exactly why I wound up in retail.
He wrote his business thesis on kind of how to do athletic shoes differently at the time. And basically his thesis was a kind of a supply chain thesis, which was, hey, if we put them on the best folks in the world, make the technology meaningful, and source it in low-cost, high-volume, efficient manufacturing countries, particularly in Asia, we're off to the races. So that's what he did, formed a company with his former coach at the University of Oregon. And then along came the 70s, which was the running boom, where a whole lot of people took up running and were wearing running shoes. And then in the 80s, I guess you could say that the fitness boom came along with everybody doing aerobics and cross-training and Bo knows this and that. And then I think through the 90s, I guess you could say it was the ascendance of basketball as a global sport. Certainly maybe still not as global as soccer, but getting there. And where the NBA, through its marketing and particularly with the best ambassador in the world for that sport, Michael Jordan, kind of brought it all to a head for us. So $9 billion later, it all kind of came to a crescendo last week. And what do I have in here? Speaking of retail, I had to get up at 6 a.m. the other day to go try to buy these new Air Jordans at Foot Locker. No, I'm just kidding. But what you have here is a shoe just released last week. You may have read about it. It's been in the papers a little bit. But the new Air Jordan shoe comes in a metal case, believe it or not. You pop this open, come in there. Even believe it or not, you can get a CD in here, a CD-ROM that says tells you all about or DVD tells you all about the making of the shoe and Michael's thoughts on it and all that stuff. And somewhere in here you actually have the shoe. So for $200, what you have is really I think example of design excellence, extravagance beyond, and then you've got the best guy who ever played the game. Actually still playing the game and wearing it. So all this stuff comes to a head, and again, it represents a lot of what we do, but kind of a funny or not so funny thing if you're a shareholder. It happened about in the late 90s. After a bunch of years of double-digit growth, we hit our plateau in footwear, global footwear, in about 97. And again, so about the last 4 years, our business has been flat globally. To give you some context, what's flat? Well, basically, we're selling about 180 million pairs of shoes a year, which seems like a lot in some context, but if you step back to the big global picture, which Mr. Hawley and Kamen and they referenced today, some of those numbers, 6.2 billion people in the world, et cetera, you realize that, at least in my opinion, 180 million pairs of shoes isn't really that much. especially when you also realize that 95% of our sales are in the U.S., Western Europe, and Japan. I mean, there's a whole lot of world outside of those areas, and a whole lot of athletes playing sports outside of those areas. And so we're sitting there, and again, we've got Tiger Woods and Michael Jordan, and all that stuff is still going great, but a lot of these markets are saturated for us. So we decided to try to figure out how can we basically access the 4/5 of the globe that can't afford our sneakers. They can't even afford the $40 ones, let alone the $200 ones. And so again, it's a different socioeconomic situation in many third world countries. When you're worrying about feeding your family, you're not really concerned with spending a couple $100 on a basketball shoe. So we stepped back and said there's athletes all over the world. Let's just take one country for example, China. I mean, the largest country in the world, depending on where India is that week, and 1.2 billion or so people. And a lot of our manufacturing happens in China, about 30% of our manufacturing in China. We make about 50 million pairs of shoes a year in China, but we export them all, again, to the US, Europe, Japan. In China alone, to Chinese athletes playing sports in China, we sell about 1 million pairs of shoes, which again, might seem a lot, but not in a country of 1 billion people. So you look at some of the stats. 200 million basketball players in China, about 200 million soccer players in China. I don't know how many of you are members of the International Badminton Association, but they will tell you that over 1 billion people play their sport, badminton, a year. Over 1 billion people a year. Well, Nike doesn't make a badminton shoe. So I see that as opportunity for growth. So this is our target here. I don't know if I use this chair for my easel. Basically, these kids are playing basketball in an alley in China. He's got the basket up, hooked to the wall. He's coming in for the big slam dunk, imitating his hero, Michael Jordan, playing in whatever they can find. And so, really, how do we make Nike accessible to these kids? I mean, quite a daunting task. Honestly, especially when your socioeconomic situation and disposable income isn't exactly, to Western standards. So basically, how do we make $5 shoes? We never did, or we forgot how, or something. So we decided to kind of do a design challenge, draw pretty tight parameters around ourselves, and we kind of operated on three principles. One, we want to be on all the fields of play in the world. So really, wherever kids are playing sports, whether it's in the alleys or on the dirt fields or badminton courts or whatever, Nike should be there. We should somehow figure out how to get there. Two, we needed to employ, I guess, what I would call design for manufacture principles. And a lot of times at Nike, and I'm sure a lot of places that many of you work, designers tend to respond to architecture or race cars or Airstream trailers or whatever for design and inspiration. But I thought on this thing we needed something very, very much different, very much simpler than those kind of icons to inspire design. And so, to me, one of the ultimate examples of design for manufacture is this Bic pen that maybe we've all used somewhere along the line, about 25 or 30 cents, depending on where you're buying it, I guess. Made all over the world. It hasn't changed in 50 years or whatever. So I showed this to the designer. We decided to call the project the World Shoe Project because that was kind of our target, kind of a lofty title. And I said, this is the world pen. This should embody what we want in these shoes. They need to be simple enough yet technical enough to get the job done. You've got to be able to play basketball in them no matter what they cost. So, and again, if you examine this thing real closely, you realize there's a lot of technology packed into this little plastic pen here. You know the little clip here that makes sure it doesn't kind of fall out of your pocket? Remember when you were writing in school with these things and you put it down and it doesn't roll off the table because the edges are flat? I mean, that's something. And if any of you are in the consumer products business, and some of you are, to me this kind of holds the key to a lot of consumer products. Basically, it tells the owner when to get a new one because the ink, kind of drains down here and they say, it's time to get a new pen. So a lot of technology, in a sense, packed into this. So how do we design a shoe based on the Bic pen? We basically got real simple. decided to go back to kind of a simpler look. Might seem familiar for many of you who followed Wilt Chamberlain in the 70s or 80s. Looks a lot like some simple shoes of the past, but that's what these kids are playing in these parts of the world. They don't have the wherewithal to buy more expensive shoes. So we really designed a little bit of cushioning in the shoe, simple design, easy to manufacture in the factories, etc. Started cranking them out, and a lot of people look at this thing, especially at our offices back in Portland, say, hey, you can't play sports in that. You're kidding yourself. It's just a slab of rubber and canvas. You would never go out and do anything in that. Well, I think it was Yo-Yo Ma today that said, if you dig down deep enough locally, you find something global. I think he said it earlier, at least I thought that's what I wrote down. There's a sport called Sepak Takraw that's played in a lot of Asian countries, and if any of you have seen it, you're about to see it now. But check this out. These guys are playing in basically the cheapest shoe Nike's ever made. Let's check out the tape. So yeah, they're real. Don't try that at home. So we got to thinking about local for local, a very local sport, and making them in Thailand for the Thais, or in China for the Chinese, or in Brazil for the Brazilians. We kind of tipped our business model on its head, and we kind of bust through some other things. Like we look at this box and you say, well, why do you even need boxes if you're making the shoe in Guangzhou, China, and sending it to Shanghai? So we actually made the things in, and plus everybody just throws the box away anyway. So basically the idea is you go to the store, you find the shoe in the pack, you buy your new pair of Nike World shoes, and then take your TED brochure. And so head off to school or wherever with your new backpack on and your new Nike World shoes. So no waste, or less waste, I guess. Use something instead of a box to throw away. Lastly, we knew we were kind of onto something when the national team was wearing the things, but then we were like, well, what about just the kids every day? And one of the criticisms that some of our critics, we've got a couple out there, who label against us, they kind of say, well, geez, the kids, the folks making your shoes can't even afford to buy them. So while we were working on these things in China, they retail for about 10 US dollars or whatever in some of these countries in Southeast Asia. There was all this commotion around the sample room when we were working on the shoes, and I asked for a translation of what they were talking about, and to use a quote from, I think Daniel came in this morning with the little old lady who saw his transporter, and she looked at it and she said, they finally made something for me. That's what these kids were saying. They wanted to play in the shoes during the lunchtime or on the weekends or whatever, because while they're making these during the day, they realized, well, now Nike was making something for me. You're starting to understand where I am and what I'm about. So that's our idea. That's what I'll leave you with. And thanks for your attention. And good luck in the race tomorrow.
Okay, Frank Nuovo.
What's wrong?
I'm just returning a phone, that's all.
What is there something wrong with
This thing doesn't come up.
it? It doesn't come up? What, you want it to raise up?
No, it's just all pixelated here.
Pixelated.
Yeah.
So it's broken.
It's not a cheap phone either. See? That doesn't come up. It just... Okay. Anyway, I have it in a little bag, and it's
So
you just give it to whoever you want to give it
So
to.
you have a broken phone.
I have a broken phone.
This is a wonderful way to start. This is great.
Okay.
If I had some kind of magic. Yeah, right. If I had some kind of magic, I'd be able to produce one for you. Okay, here we go. I heard the rumor, and I want to say that I have no excuses about broken phones, but I can say this: the best way to deal with something like that is service. And in fact,
this was a setup?
It was a setup. It was a setup. That's a setup. You didn't know about that.
I didn't know about that.
But in fact, there are no excuses. You do the best that you can to make something as perfect as possible, and you make millions of them per week, and you do your very best. And the only answer, if something does go wrong, is service. So keep that in mind, and that's my point for that. What did an Italian-American musician type guy who was born and raised in Monterey, California? Come on. Wasn't it beautiful outside? Do you see the weather today?
No.
Oh, well, yeah, right. Okay. Born and raised in Monterey, California, studied jazz here, played in clubs from the time I was about 12. My father's in the audience, illegally playing in clubs. They had to rush me off stage because I really wasn't allowed in the clubs. That was my beginning, studying jazz and playing here. And let me tell you just one thing, because I have to say this. I got to meet Herbie Hancock and Quincy Jones last night. That is cool. Let's just put it where it belongs. That was just amazing. I just wanted to stand next to them and sort of absorb some of that creativity. It was just fabulous. So now I'll tell you a little bit about my story. I have 3 sections to my story. How did this guy from Monterey land up commuting once a month or more from Los Angeles to Helsinki, Finland? 13 years. That's a long time. That's a lot of traveling. It's a long way to go. And I'm very grateful for that opportunity. But I can say this, that in 1995, I was brought in after a few years of consulting and traveling as a consultant to build a global design team for Nokia. It was no easy task. They weren't number one at the time. There's a lot of work to do. There were some huge rivals. But I just want to share with you a few important things that I put at the top of my agenda. One was to think globally. And at the time, that really wasn't what was talked about that much. And I wanted to build a very strong global creative culture, not only with the design team, but I wanted to take what wonderful Finnish sense there was for good design and I wanted to amplify it about 1,000 times so my future would be a little easier on the creative sense. So I had to build a culture, help and foster a culture in Nokia that supported very high quality design. I also take the design commitment very, very seriously. So we have to produce very good design. I mean, tremendously well thought ergonomics and usability, all of that. The third thing that I learned when I was at DesignWorks USA, BMW, and when I went to Art Center was all about brand design and understanding the mark, like an automobile. I wanted to take that same sort of hand-holding a mark, the identity, the personality of a brand, and I wanted to bring it to mobile communications for Nokia. Then the last thing I had to do was provide vision on a regular basis, never sleep, always show that you're ahead of the game. Well, it's a pretty tall order. That's where it started. And so I did this, and I also started with the idea that there is no one place that a good idea comes from. When I was hired by Nokia, they said, well, when are you moving to Finland? I said, I'm not moving to Finland. Well, where are you going to work then? Well, we got to do it in Los Angeles. It's where I am. It's where my family is, and this is where I have all of my contacts. But I said the concept is global design. I want to create a network of people that are constantly interacting because good ideas come from all over the world. So I have design teams, and from the start, we started to build very slowly in Tokyo, in Denmark, in Finland, in England, in Los Angeles, in Dallas. At the time, I even had Australia, Beijing. Yeah, I travel a lot, but I have people all over the world that have fabulous ideas that come up, that bubble up from local culture and then become a global idea. Let me tell you, a global design team is not easy. I have video conferencing in my home. My phone's never shut off, and I have the most fabulous wife and family because it is 24 hours. But I think there was a magic to that, and it's been worth it. So I wanted to share that with you. The design quality commitment starts with understanding the product. Now, mobile phones are a very serious product. So many people have them. So understanding the human touch. Is it getting cut off? No, it's not. You're getting the full thing. Evolving ease of use. This is some of the early work that shows what a basic phone was. And in fact, here, the Navikey on the lower right was the idea of being able to have tremendous functionality in a product and doing it with just one key. That's a 5110, one of the most famous products in the world, actually. More people have that than any other single product. Okay, I'm living in a world now which is all about a transition from place to place to effectively person to person. And in that time, back then, there weren't a lot of people talking about mobile phones. We didn't have even that many people having mobile phones. And this was about to happen, this move from place to place up to multimedia to everything. I'm not going to read them. So designing is very complex when you never are actually in one place. I've always been interested in finding the sweet spot in design. I took these pictures of Oakley products because it showed a very conservative design on the left and a highly creative design on the right, which, by the way, there's something very similar back in the 1800s or something. There's a book about spectacles. It's not a new idea. There are no new ideas, I guess. But you find those radical two sides, and then what's beautiful is finding a sweet spot. And I found a sweet spot for Nokia. So in all that we do, chasing that down has been one of the goals. Now, face of the brand is something very important for me, as I was saying. I can get through it. Well, the face of the brand began with business. Mobile phones were just about business. And in fact, remember the culture of a company back then as a designer trying to drive forward into the future when they said, well, really, business is our customers, and it's primarily men. And that was the brief. And we're trying to expand the brief. Well, this is how the basic business-driven looking product evolved, the core, what we call the classic Nokia. And what I was trying to do in there as well is take certain points which were both user interface oriented and stylistic and carry them forward. 1996, we first introduced the world's first wireless internet phone, the 9000 series. This is the 9210 with the color screen. So since 1996, we've had internet, email, SMS, all of these kinds of things, and we've been studying it. This will be available in the US, by the way, finally, because we had to suffer through GSM and all the time that it took to go global. So this is a global phone, finally. That will be happening here. This was just introduced. This is the first multimedia phone with a camera built into it. Not going to get into it, but now we're getting from ears to eyes. So interesting transition happening there. The vision component, of course, let me just talk about for a second that mobile phones are about the person. And the person, what they wear and how they behave and how they reflect on their own personality. Well, fashion itself over many, many years developed how people look, why, the functionality and everything. In basically just 10 years, we've gone a long way. And we're trying to catch up with how essentially fashion and technology come together. Well, okay, fashion and technology. The proposition of bringing fashion and technology together, when you're talking to a bunch of engineers, yeah, all right, you're with me, okay. That's a tough proposition. And of course, they're saying, you can't be serious. Fashion, tech, is this serious design? Let me share with you, Chuck Pelley, my old boss, he came up to me and go, gee, Frank, you're doing really well. But you know, all the designers in the design community, ID and all, you're talking about fashion too much. This is serious design. I said, Chuck, of course it's serious design, but you have to understand, it's serious inside and it's fun outside. And that's very important. This is very serious technology. The functionality is actually very much the same, but why can't the personality be expressed on the product itself? So we were the first. Back in 1990, we started experimenting with changeable covers. Got a whole bunch of studies done there, and in 1996, again, we introduced changeable covers. If I could tell you how many millions and millions of phones, how many billions of dollars it is per year to be a pirate for a Nokia phone cover, it's an unbelievable business. We try and capture as much of that market as we can, but it's an amazing thing that happened. So what I'm going to say here, and there's a little music, but don't worry about it, this is a morph of brand design from the very beginning straight through to where we are essentially today. This is a little fun music. Yeah, great, cool. So in the various different forms, and what I'm trying to show you is by capturing very different markets, we're actually still keeping the Nokia look. And we pioneered that swishy sort of scoop there in the very first product. We were able to evolve it. Keeping brand identity was in the face of some marketing folks who said, if it doesn't pass the black and white newspaper test, in other words, it has to look very different, then it won't go. And I was pushing and advocating brand design and the image and identity of the company, all the way to our fashion, the highest point in fashion, which we call premium, in launching the 8800, which is what I just replaced a moment ago. So going on to the next step. The next step is very much talking about where we're going. What's the vision now? We're talking about, of course, wearability, a little doodle I did there about, okay, kind of my dream girl, and, well, my wife, actually. And because we're going even more towards vision. Where the heck is there it is. A new vision. Now, for the last 5 years, I've been working on something very secreted. It's been an amazing exercise. And the proposal was to look at all industry and to see what products have matured to such an extent that you can actually move into craft. And this was very serious. In 1997, I wrote a proposal. A designer writing a proposal, a business proposal, to introduce a new company based on the following. The company's name is Vertu. And the work there is by Christopher Bucklow. What we do is we curate artists to do works for us. It's part of our bottom line of unparalleled communication, which is the foundation of this new brand, wholly owned by Nokia. A company, we have about 200 people around the world now. It was built in secret up till about 3 weeks ago when we launched in Paris. And it's all about the fusion of craft and technology. Now, I take it very, very seriously. I have 20 patents on the first product. It took a lot of work to do that. Since 1997, building the entire company and building the product, designing the product itself. So I'll talk a little bit about that. So I'm going now from mass market, and I think we've been reasonably successful in understanding a very broad base of what the mass market is all about. But during that whole time, and I still maintain that job, by the way, during that whole time, I've been dreaming of doing something that simply isn't possible in mass market. And starting with, okay, right, go back, sorry. There it is. Okay, fine, right. So fusion of craft and technology, and then the next step, of course, service. See, I had a little tie-in there, okay? Right. And the tie-in, though, which is really important, and it quite simply is, I'm going to be very serious with you. How many people have walked into a mobile phone shop and seen the absolutely horrendous service that you usually get? People, all right. Need I say any more? The dream was Sure, that's fine, and wherever possible, you have to have, people, you can't afford to have very attentive people, it's up to the companies. But what if you could actually go and have a fantastic experience and buy the product like a fine shoe store, like a fine watch shop, and actually have that whole experience? What if it can be one-on-one? And what if the promise of the brand and the service continues beyond the point that you actually purchase the product? Very important. So unparalleled communication is the bottom line for the spirit of the brand. And I'm very pleased to say that that is not a V, it's actually this. And this comes from me sitting around this fabulous table eating pasta with a very loud and wonderful family having conversation interactively. And it's about the spirit of expression. And it was very open in my family. It continues. So Craftsman and Technology is about our artistic media. Extraordinary Service is about our relationship. And Unparalleled Communication is about our style. Now, how do you deliver it in product? Well, you deal with it by hiring an entirely new cast of people that really understand what handcraft is about. We have many pieces in this because the entire experience is very unique in itself. This is the power key at the top of what we call, now bear with me, because I'm trying to get all of you right now to make the switch from getting a free mobile phone with service to spending what is 5,000 US dollars for the stainless steel version. Now, before you choke, let me explain something. If you have gone shopping and you understand what a fine watch is all about, you understand that a Patek Philippe starts at about 7,500 stainless steel. So it's probably a pretty good deal considering how much technology and use you're actually going to get out of this. And the service that goes with it, the service that comes with it. Okay? So let's just talk about it for a second. We'll go on a little bit more. The idea is the finest components in the world. Tested, tested, and tested. And whether it's a speaker or a microphone, every single detail, the polish, everything about it. This is a high-tech ceramic pillow. You've seen that type of technology on a Rado watch. The pillow is where the ear speaker is. This is a sapphire crystal face. The entire face is a sapphire crystal. Incredible clarity, virtually scratch resistant. So forget about the lens scratching anymore. It won't happen with this. Each of the keys are sculpted in great detail. So this is a very tight view of what's called essentially the home position in the middle of the keyboard. Even the little, what I call the points at the sides of the key, these are actually built to protect the crystal face. So if it does hit a surface, it doesn't come down, so they're like little barriers. And they're also obviously quite aesthetic in the treatment. On the back, we have a polyphonic speaker, a high-performance speaker, and the ringtones are pretty amazing on this, ring tunes. And you bring a little bit of my music world back in. I worked with an old colleague, a songwriter in Los Angeles, and we worked together and created some fabulous ringtones I'd like to share with you later on. That would be great. Yes, it does come in very rich materials. It comes in gold, and I do happen to have our platinum version in my pocket. Now, again, I'm asking you to have a little vision here, because at some point, an object like a watch was very functional. And somebody had to decide, I really want to spend the next 40 years in my little shop in Switzerland and make the most exquisite watches, and I'm going to call them timepieces. Somebody said, I'm going to make the most fabulous pen in the world, and I'm going to call it a writing instrument. At some point, it had to go from a quill to something else. Now, my life, the last 13 years, has been dedicated to mobile communications. And I'm a bit romantic about what I do in my creative career. And in 1997, I was proposing that by now we would have what are called communication instruments. And that's about pulling something forward to a whole new level. Yes, we have Connolly leather on the sides for the grip, serves a function. And that's the Vertu communication instrument. Now let's talk a little bit more about what this all means, and it's not just about the first product. This is not a diamond-studded faceplate, all right? This is from the inside out. Now you say, well, if I'm going to invest $5,000, I want it to last. Well, part of the 20 patents is upgradable hardware and software. That's a whole new concept. You're going to have to get used to it. Every time I do an interview and talk about this, they say, well, what does it do? It's not just what it does, it's what it will do. And that's a whole new thing. For effectively what is a very classic form factor of a phone, it is essentially a phone, but it's treated in a special form factor. But now this starts to talk about what else I'm talking about with the future, jewelry, wearability. Now you're catching on. A new brand had to be created that wasn't old luxury and wasn't new technology, one that fused technology and craft together, because the future is a brand that can actually deliver high technology and high craft will have a future in wearable technology. Now you're getting it a little bit maybe. So it's more than just the first instrument. It's not just about platinum. And let me tell you, my heart bled when I heard on CNN, oh, fancy $20,000 platinum, $20,000 platinum phone. And that's all they would talk about. They didn't know the story. They didn't understand. And I was just banging the walls because the platinum is something to celebrate in materials, but the authenticity is in the craft. And where we're going in the future is all about that. Now it's more. Now for space and place, we have an exquisite desk stand made out of the same kind of materials. Vertical, the action is fantastic. It's the entire experience. Just a couple other pieces to show you. Where is it? There it is. Okay, I cut all those out to make it short. But this is the future. Courtesy of, I don't know if the president of Art Center is here, but we sponsored a project at Art Center a while back, and this is about wearable technology. And this is a concept from the Art Center. So maybe you're getting it now. So we've launched just 3 weeks ago, and let me tell you, it took a little vision and it took a little special something in that creative culture on the executive side to invest the millions of dollars in this new sub-brand for Nokia, and it's preparing for this kind of future. So we have the fabulous partnership, obviously, with Nokia technology inside, and we have the high craft and precision. And so this is a great future piece, and that's it. That's where I am at the moment. I'm still a little jet lagged because I'm launching the brand around the world, and that's why we're doing Vertu. And I'm still with Nokia, so I'm balancing mass market and all of that with a global team that I've built over since 1995, and now this new team, new company, which is Vertu. And thank you for letting me tell you my story. That's the short version. Okay. Just a second. I have to personalize it. And those of you who have Nokia phones, there's a key, and it's called the silent key, and it's at the top. It's one. You can hear the timbre and the bells. That's a traditional ring. Just a couple more. And for those who are rather hip.
So every phone ringing in here was that one phone.
And one that's a little more pleasant. It's really cool to show Quincy Jones that. When this rang in La Maison Blanche in Paris, nobody was offended. Okay.
Thank you, Fred.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you. One of the greatest TED displays of a few years ago was the, what kind of snake was that?
The anaconda.
It was from the movie Anaconda.
It was an anaconda.
And it was, the whole hallway out there was that, the anaconda model from that movie that came out of IDEO. And at the same time, we had Jim Fowler on stage
with a real one.
With a real one of about 17 feet on the stage. And that was an extraordinary moment.
That's great.
David Kelly.
Thanks, Mr. Good afternoon, or good evening, I guess it is. Whatever time it is, I realize I'm the only thing between you and dinner.
What?
So I know my friends are hungry in the audience, so I'll try to be as brief as I possibly can. But there's a lot of exciting things happening in the design world and at IDEO this past year, and I'm pleased to get a chance to share some of those with you. I didn't attend the first TED back in 1984, but I've been to a lot of them since that time. I thought it was kind of be interesting to think back to that time.
when Richard got the whole thing started. Thank you very much, Richard. It's been a big, enjoyable part of my life coming here. And so thinking back, I was thinking those of us in Silicon Valley were kind of really focused on products or objects, certainly technological objects. And so it was great fun in those days, and some of those of you who are in the audience were my clients, and we'd come in with some prototype underneath a black cloth, and we'd put it on the conference table, and we'd pull off the black cloth, and everybody would ooh and ah, and that was a really good time. And so we'll continue to focus on products, as we always have, but and if you were here last year, you probably I probably wrestled you to the floor and tried to show you my new iModule 2, which was a camera that plugged into the handspring. And I took a lot of pictures last year. Very few people knew what I was up to, but I took a lot of pictures. And this year, maybe you could show the slides, a few of the quick ones. And this year, we're carrying this handspring Trio, which we had a lot to do with and helped Handspring design it. And the Handspring people are here. If you want to be moved up on the wait list, I think they could probably arrange that. Also, although we designed it a few years ago, it's just become ubiquitous in the last year or so. The HeartStream defibrillator, which is saving lives. Maybe you've seen them in the airports. They seem to be everywhere now. Lots of lives are being saved by those. And we're just about to announce the Zinio reader product that I believe will make magazines even more enjoyable to read. Anyway, so we really will continue to focus on products, but something's happened in the last 18 years since Richard started TED, and that's that people like us, I know people in other places have caught on to this for a long time, but for us, we've really just started to get we've kind of like climbed Maslow's hierarchy a little bit. And so we're now focused more and more on kind of human-centered design, human-centeredness in an approach to design. And that really involves designing like behaviors and personality into products. And I think you're starting to see that, and it's making our job even more enjoyable. Interestingly enough, we used to primarily build 3D models, you know, like you've seen some today, and 3D renderings, and we'd go and we'd show those as communicating our ideas. But firms like ours are having to move to a point where we get those objects that we're designing and get them in motion, showing how they'll be used. And so in order to do that, we've been forming internal video production groups in order to make these kind of experience prototypes that show just what we mean about the kind of man-machine relationship. And it's a much better way to see. It's kind of like, you know, architects who show people in their houses as opposed to them being empty. So I thought that I would show you a few videos to kind of show off this new broader definition of design in products and services and environments. I have a few of them. They're no more than a minute or a minute and a half a piece, but I thought you might be interested in seeing some of our work over the last year and how it responds in video. So could we push the button on that? So Prada, New York, we were asked by Rem Koolhaas and OMA to help us conceive the technology that's in their retail store in New York. He wanted a new kind of store, a store that had a cultural role as well as a retail one. And that meant actually designing custom technology as opposed to just buying things off the shelf and putting them to use. So there's lots of things. Everything has RF tags. There's RF tags on the cards. There's these staff devices that are all around the store. You pick them up, and once you see something that you're interested in, the staff person can scan them in, and then they can be shown on any screen throughout the store. You can look at color and sizes and how it appeared on the runway or whatever. Right? And so then the merchandise that you're interested can be scanned. It's taken into the dressing room, and in the dressing room there are scanners so that we know exactly what clothing you have in the dressing room, and we can put that up on a touch screen, and you can play with that and get more information about the clothing that you're interested in as you're trying it on.
been used a lot of places, but I particularly like the use here of liquid crystal displays in the changing room. It was the last time I went to see this store, there was a huge buzz about people standing outside wondering, am I going to actually get to see the people changing clothes here? And but if you push the button, of course, the whole wall goes dark. So you can try to get approval or not for whatever you're wearing. And then one of my favorite features of the technology is the magic mirror, where you put on the clothes, there's a big display in the mirror, and you can turn around, but there's a 3-second delay so you can see what you look like from the back or all the way around as you do it. So about the next thing should show the Science Museum in London. Yes, about a year and a half ago, we were asked to design an installation in the museum. This is a new wing of the Science Museum that's primarily about digital and biomedical issues. And a group at ITCH, which is now part of IDEO, designed this interactive wall that's about 4 stories tall. I don't know if anybody's seen this. It's pretty spectacular in the room. Anyway, it's based on the London subway system, and so you can see that these are, the goal was to bring some of the feedback that the people who had gone to the museum were giving and get it up on the wall so everybody could see, for everybody to see. So you enter your information, and then like this London tube system, the little trains go around with your, what you're thinking about, and then when you get kind of to a station, it's expanded so that you can actually read it. Then when you exit the IMAX theater on the 4th floor, mostly teenagers coming out of there, there's this big open space that has these tables in it that have interactive games, which are quite fun, also designed by Durrell and Andrew of ITCH. And the topics include things that the museum is about, male fertility, choosing the sex of your baby, or what a driverless car might be like. There's lots of room so people can kind of come up and kind of understand what it is before they get involved. Also, it's not shown in the video, but these are very beautiful. They go to the top of the wall, and when they kind of reach all the way to the top after they've bounced around, they kind of disperse into bits and kind of go off into the atmosphere. This next video, oh, there should be another video there. The next video is not done by us. This is CBS Morning News, or I'm sorry, CBS Sunday Morning that aired about 2 weeks ago. And Scott Adams ran into us and asked us if we wouldn't help to design the ultimate cubicle for Dilbert, which sounded like a fun thing. And so we couldn't pass it up. He's always been interested in kind of technology in the future.
I realized that at some point I might be the world's expert on what's wrong with cubicles. So we thought, well, wouldn't it be fun to get together with some of the smartest design guys in the world and try to figure out if we could make the cubicle better.
Though they work in a wide-open office space, spectacularly set under San Francisco's Oakland Bay Bridge, the team built their own little cubicles to fully experience the problems.
Yeah. A one-way mirror. I can look at it, you can look at yourself.
They took pictures.
You feel so trapped, you know, and someone kind of leans over and you're sort of like held captive there for a minute.
So far it's chaos. We're in
it's
the
amazing how much this is like the Nightline piece
chaos.
that was done on us, if you
I'm not
saw
sure
that
anybody
about
knows
the
what's
shopping
going to happen
cart.
in the next few minutes, but a lot of people are doing stuff, so that's good. So we'll see what happens.
The first group builds a cubicle in which the walls are screens for the computer and for family photos. In the second group scenario, the walls are alive and actually give Dilbert a group hug. Behind the humor is the idea of making the cubicle more human.
So here's the final thing, complete with kind of orange lighting that follows the sun follows the tracks of the sun across the sky, so you feel that in your cubicle. And my favorite feature, which is a flower in a vase that wilts when you leave in disappointment, and then when you come back, it kind of comes up to greet you and happy to see you.
It's like built right into the wall.
You know, there's homey touches like a built-in fish tank in the walls or something to be aggressive with to
I see
release
this is
tension.
Customizable for the boss of your choice.
And of course a hammock for your afternoon nap that
For
stretches
Gilbert,
across your
says
cubicle.
his creator.
Life would be sweet in a cubicle like this.
This next project, we were asked to design a pavilion to celebrate the recycling of the water on the Millennium Dome in London. The dome has an incredible amount of water that washes off of it, as well as wastewater. So this building actually celebrates the water as it comes out of the recycling plant and goes into the reed bed so that it can be filtered for the final time. The pavilion's design goal was to be kind of quiet and peaceful. In contrast to if you went inside the dome where it's kind of wild and crazy and everybody's, like learning all kinds of things or fooling around or whatever they're doing, but it was intended to be quite quiet. And then you would wander around and gather information in a kind of a straightforward fashion about the recycling process and what's being done and how they're going to reuse the water once it comes through the plant. And then if you saw, I should have said, the panels actually rotate so you can get information on the front side, but as they rotate, you can see the actual recycling plant behind with all the machines as they actually process the water. There you can see, there's the plant. These are all very low-budget videos, like quick prototypes. And in TED tradition, we're announcing a new product here tonight, which is the first time this has ever been shown in public. It's called Spyfish, and it's a company called H2I, started by Nigel Jagger in London. And it's a company that's trying to bring the experience. Many people have boats or enjoy being on boats, but a very small percentage of the people actually have the capability or the interest in going under the water and actually seeing what's there and enjoying what scuba divers do. This product has two cameras. You throw it over the side of your boat, and you basically scuba dive without getting wet. For us, there's the object. For us, it was a kind of two projects. One, to design the interface so that the interface doesn't get in your way. You can have that kind of immersive experience of being underwater, of feeling like you're underwater, seeing what's going on. And the other one was to design the object and make sure that it was a consumer product and not a research tool. And so we spent a lot of time. This has been going on for about 7 or 8 years, this project, and just ready to start building them.
The Spyfish is a revolutionary subaquatic video camera. It can dive to 500 feet to where sunlight does not penetrate and is equipped with powerful lights. It becomes your eyes and ears as you venture into the deep. The battery-powered Spyfish sends the live video feed through a slender cable.
This slender cable was
Up
a
on
huge
deck,
technological
a cable
advancement
winder
and
takes
allowed
care
the
of
whole
the
thing
cable,
to be the size
and
that
a
it
central
is.
box connects the whole system together. Maneuvering the Spyfish is simple with the wireless remote control. You watch the video with superimposed graphics that indicate your depth and compass heading. The fluid graphics and ambient sounds combine to help you completely lose yourself underwater.
And the last thing I'll talk about is Apritech, which is a project I'm very excited about. Apritech is a company started by Dr. Martin Fisher, who's a good friend of mine. He's a PhD from Stanford. He found himself in Kenya on a Fulbright, and he had a very interesting insight, which is that he said there must be entrepreneurs in Kenya. There must be entrepreneurs everywhere. And he noticed that for weddings and funerals, they could find enough money to put something together. And so he decided to start manufacturing products in Kenya with Kenyan manufacturers, designed by people like us, but taken there. And to this date, he's been going for only a few years, he started 19,000 companies. He's made 30,000 new jobs, and just the products, the sales of the products, this is a nonprofit, that the sales of this products is now 0.6% of the GDP of Kenya. This is one guy doing this. This is a pretty spectacular thing. So we're in the process of helping them design deep well, low-cost manual pumps in order for these people who have like a quarter acre of land to be able to grow crops in the off-season. What they do now is they can grow crops in the rainy season, but they can't grow them in the off-season. And so by doing that, the woman that you saw in the first thing now is she's a school teacher, always wanted to send her kids to college, and she's going to be able to do it because of these things. So with seed squeezers and pumps and hay balers and kind of very straightforward things that we're designing, my students are doing this as class projects, and IDEO's donated their time to do this kind of work. And so it's really amazing to see his success, Martin's. Great. There's Richard. So we also were thinking about the experience of Richard, and so we designed this hat because I knew I'd be the last one in the day, and I needed to deal with him. So I just have one more thing to say. Did you read it? Well, it's always kind of funny when he comes up and hovers, you don't want to be rude to him and you don't want to feel guilty, and so I thought just this would do it, where I just sit here and... So we saw a lot of interesting things being designed today in this session, and from all the different presenters, and in my own practice from Prada to Apritech. It's really exciting that we're taking a more human-centered approach to design, that we're including behaviors and personalities in the thing we do, and I think this is great. Designers are more trusted and more integrated into the business strategy of companies, and I have to say, for one, I'm feel very lucky that the progress that design has made since the first TED. Thanks a lot.
Ha ha!